So it turns out there's a new spying program that people are outraged by. Fun for everybody. Turns out there's a thing called the Special Operations Division, SOD, fun. It involves 24 partner agencies, including the FBI, CIA, NSA, Internal Revenue Service, Department of Homeland Security, etc. Well, the NSA is where it gets fun. Turns out that they have been collecting intelligence and passing it on to the local cops, but not letting prosecutors and defense attorneys and judges know in cases. It's a story broken by Reuters, and let me go to their reporting on it. Here, they say a secretive U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration unit is funneling information from intelligence intercepts, wiretaps, informants, and a massive database of telephone records to authorities across the nation to help them launch criminal investigations of Americans. Wait a minute! I thought this intelligence was for national security and Al-Qaeda. That's domestic criminal investigations. Interesting. Reuters continues. Although these cases rarely involve national security issues, documents reviewed by Reuters show that law enforcement agents have been directed to conceal how such investigations truly begin, not only from defense lawyers, but also sometimes from prosecutors and judges. Now look, oftentimes they have legitimate warrants by which they collected this intelligence. But then not telling defense lawyers, prosecutors, judges, etc. is egregious, let alone the times they don't have legitimate warrants. Remember, it was all supposed to be about national security. Now we're talking about drug dealers, drug users. Okay, great. We're fully targeting Americans and not even letting the justice system know about it. Reuters continues. If defendants don't know how an investigation began, they cannot know to ask to review potential sources of exculpatory evidence, information that could reveal entrapment, mistakes, or biased witnesses. Yeah, that would pretty much run counter to our justice system. What remains of it? Well, now lawyers are saying, I can't believe they're doing this. I thought I trusted the government. They thought it was for national security. Well, here's Harvard Law School professor Nancy Gertner, who, by the way, used to work as a federal judge from 1994 to 2011. She says, it is one thing to create special rules for national security. Ordinary crime is entirely different. It sounds like they're phoning up investigations. To which I say, of course they are. This is what we told you from day one. You give people unlimited power, you think they're not going to use it and then abuse it? Hello? Welcome to human nature. That's kind of how it works. Once they have this power, of course they're going to want to close cases with it. So here's a fun part of the ruse that they run. What they would do is recreate the investigations, pretending they never had that original evidence that began the investigation. It's called a parallel construct, okay? So they would go out there and do parallel constructions like this. The document specifically directs agents to omit the SOD's involvement from investigative reports, affidavits, discussions with prosecutors, and courtroom testimony. In other words, shh, don't tell them where you really got the evidence, but we'll tell you when to show up, where to show up, and then you go bust the guys and go, oh, for example, if it was in a car or a truck, oh, look at your busted taillight. That is why I pulled you over. Wow, look at all the drugs I have found in your truck. Okay, that is how this investigation began. Not talking about, of course, the wiretapping and the intelligence they had gathered earlier. So that's outrageous that they're withholding the information. And by the way, as the article explains, oftentimes they get the right guy. Also sometimes, and quite often, they get the wrong people. Oops. Okay. Now, Finn Salander was a DEA agent from 91 to 2008. He says, it's just like laundering money. You work it backwards to make it clean. That's what they do with the evidence. So they're laundering the evidence so that you can't tell where the original data came from. Okay, that's wonderful. No, they would never abuse this. Now, Robert Speckle, who's a former prosecutor and a senior DEA lawyer, says, it's a balancing act, and they've been doing it this way for years. Do I think it's a good way to do it? No, because now that I'm a defense lawyer, I see how difficult it is to challenge. Oh, Oh, again, don't make me do it again. Of course, of course. When he was a prosecutor and he used the secret evidence, he's like, oh, that's awesome. Now that he's a defense lawyer, he's like, boy, God, it's really hard to show your guy's innocent if you don't know where the evidence came from. Yeah, it's kind of why it should be illegal. And then finally, Henry Hackmeyer Jr., former federal prosecutor, says this: you can't game the system. You can't create this subterfuge. These are drug crimes, not national security cases. If you don't draw the line here, where do you draw it? And I got bad news for you, my friend. They're not going to draw it anywhere. If you keep letting them do it, they're going to do this, and they'll go further and further, and they will use it in every investigation, including ones they started not because anybody had done anything wrong, but that they somehow had angered the government, or someone that worked inside the government, or someone that was a private contractor that worked for the government and didn't happen to like you for his own personal reasons. Now they'll tell me, oh no, that could never happen. And sometime later they'll turn around and go, I can't believe that happened. My God, if we don't draw the line here, where should we draw it? Well, you should draw it where we told you to draw it. Much, much earlier, when you shouldn't let them do the domestic spying in the first place.